Hi everyone, it's Mr. Vallejo. Welcome to biology class. Today we'll be taking a look at the primitive invertebrates, but specifically we're going to be studying the phylum Cnidaria. The phylum Cnidaria is made up of organisms that have special stinging cells. Those include the jellies and the hydra, the sea anemone, the coral. We're going to take a look at those today. So let's go to the shared screen and we will get started. All right. Let me remind you that we will be taking Cornell notes. If you want to download the template, you can do that and set it up something like this and put your main notes in this section right here. Remember to write at least 5 Cornell questions. And then over here at the bottom, a summary. It says something like, in this lecture, comma, we learned, and you're off. All right. Again, phylum Cnidaria. It's pronounced Cnidaria. The C is silent. So this is phylum Cnidaria. Here's a great picture of these jellies here, and these are representative of the phylum Cnidaria. When I think of Cnidaria, I think of jellyfish, which of course are not actually fish. So biologists like to call them jellies rather than jellyfish. Now, Cnidaria have a particular type of symmetry. You and I are bilaterally symmetrical. That means you can split us right down the middle and have 2 equal halves. Remember that sponges are asymmetrical. Sponges have no symmetry to speak of. You cut them in half, the halves are not equal no matter where you go. Now, if you were to do that with an Cnidaria, they are symmetrical about a single axis, particularly about a single central point. So as long as you cut right through that middle, right there, you get 2 equal halves. So it can be anywhere as long as you cut through that central point, then you're going to get 2 equal halves. They're radially symmetrical. Now, some general comments about Cnidaria. And Cnidaria are very simple. Remember, we are just starting our study of invertebrate zoology, and this is the second of the major groups. So jellyfish, Cnidaria in general, have no organs. That's because they do not have the tissue called the mesoderm. The germ layer tissues called mesoderm, but they do have tissue layer organization. So they do have cells that can work together, but those cells do not form an actual organ like your stomach or your lungs or something like that. But their cells do work together, so we say that they do have tissues. That's because our organs come basically from the germ layer called mesoderm. Many of our organs, out of the 3 germ layers, the mesoderm is the most important for organ formation. We have ectoderm, endoderm, and then we have mesoderm. Well, mesoderm is a lot of the organs have a mesoderm component to it. So mesoderm is very important in organ formation, and jellies don't have any mesoderm, so they don't make any organs. Cnidaria are, for the most part, marine. Remember from last time that marine means that they live in the ocean. Organisms can be aquatic, which means they live in the water, or they can be freshwater organisms. That means that they live in lakes and rivers and streams. But most Cnidaria are marine organisms. These guys are carnivores. They will eat other things, but they are plankton in that they float around in the ocean. They don't really have a significant amount of locomotion. They don't decide that they're going to swim over to the right because they don't even have a brain, but they do rely on the waves and the wind to move them from place to place. So in that sense, we call them plankton. But if something were to get into its tentacles, it would sting that and eat that. So watch out. Just like these guys over here on the right picture, this is probably in Australia. You'll see these signs like this. The jellyfish stings are painful, stay out of the water. Well, these guys maybe didn't heed that warning, right? Got that red flag going. I'm not going in there. All right, let's take a look at some comments about morphology. Morphology is animal form, or just form in general. We can study the morphology of plants as well. Some of you remember the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that were able to change their shape. And so when we study morphology, and we're studying the shape or the structure of organisms. Now these guys have two different body types in their life cycle. The first one's called the polyp, and in the picture it's the one on the left. The polyp, we say, is vase-shaped, the mouth up, and it's stuck in one place. It's sessile. The other stage of the life cycle is diametrically opposed. It's called the medusa. And you can see in the picture here, and this is what we usually think of when we think of the jellies. The medusa has its umbrella shape, and its mouth is facing down, as you can see in the picture. Generally speaking, of course, they can swim upside down. So this is in our representation, the mouth is down. And these guys can move from place to place. So we say they are modal is the term for smaller organisms that can move from place to place. So medusa and modal. As far as reproduction goes, jellies are both asexual and sexual reproducing organisms. Asexually, structures form specialized structure called buds. Again, we saw this in the sponge, but the bud is a special structure that breaks off and then grows into a genetically identical organism. So that's how these guys reproduce without sperm and egg. But they are also able to produce sperm and egg. You can see in the picture, the medusa is able to make both sperm and eggs. So they're different. These guys are, you can have separate sex jellies. So some are male and some are female. And you can see that the medusa here is producing this egg. And here you have the sperm coming in, and then that's fertilization. So that's sexual reproduction. Once the egg is fertilized and the zygote forms and grows and differentiates, what we have is the planula stage, which is just before it reaches the polyp stage. The planula, though, is interesting because it has, and can't see it real well in this picture, but it does have these little hair-like structures on them that help them swim away a little bit. And so it helps to spread out the species so that we don't have all of the offspring in one place, and they spread out somewhat. And that helps them as a species to survive a little better because they don't have to compete for the same food source. Speaking of food, the slide here talks about the Solenoid. This is the old term for the Cnidaria, and it means hollow gut. And so if you look at the picture right here, that would be, in essence, the stomach of the Cnidarian, but it doesn't have a stomach, it doesn't have organs, but it has a central space, and it can squirt digestive enzymes into this empty space called the hollow gut, or the Solenoid, when it is able to eat organisms that way. Again, earlier I said these guys have tissue level organization. They don't have the mesoderm, but they are able to form nerves, and the nerves form a net. So it's not a brain, but we say it's a nerve net. And so it allows the coordination of the different cells to happen. So it can, if it stings something that goes into its tentacles, that it can bring it into the Solenoid. And so it's a general response, but it's not really thinking. These guys have no circulatory system, no respiratory system. They don't have a place anyway. The organs we're forming, they don't have the special place in the body that you and I have. We have body cavities that are filled with organs, and we'll study those in a little bit, because these guys actually form in organisms as simple as worms. So sponges have cell level organization. Cnidaria have tissue level organization, but we're going to learn that the worms actually start to show in an organ level organization, because they have a space to put those organs. They also have a mesoderm. There are two important structures that we need to distinguish. The cnidocyte, as you can see from the ending, it has to do with the cell. And so the cnidocyte is the cell that has the nematocyst, which is the stinger. Okay, and so you can see that in the picture. This whole thing is the cnidocyte, and then the stinger in this one is coiled up like that. It's ready to go. There are three types of stingers. There's that you see generally in nematocysts, and this is a Portuguese man o' war. Here on the west coast of the United States, you wouldn't see these, but you might see a Pacific man o' war. Sometimes they're found in Santa Monica Bay occasionally, and they have a kind of a blue tint to them. But the three types of stingers you have are, you have something that's like a fishing hook. It's sharp at the end, but it has a little barb on it, so that it goes in easily. But then the damage occurs when you start to pull out the hook or the stinger. Some are corkscrews, so that they go in, they have a point, but each time the organism moves, it's the fish that goes deeper and deeper in. And then another way, probably the most hazardous one, is the one that looks like or works like a hypodermic needle, and it's hollow, and that's where these guys can inject their neurotoxins, a dangerous chemical that messes with your nerves. So that's the probably for humans the most hazardous type of jellyfish will have these hypodermic type of stingers. Alrighty, to finish up, let's take a look at the three different classes of Cnidaria. We have the hydroids, the jellies, and the sea anemones. We have slides for each of these, so let's go ahead and just recognize that there are three different groups, three different classes. Remember, the taxonomic organization is these are all in the kingdom Animalia, and now we're taking a look at the phylum Cnidaria. And remember, it goes kingdom, phylum, class. King Philip came over from Germany Saturday. So kingdom, phylum, class, and these are three different classes of Cnidaria. So first you have the hydroids. Now the hydroids, an example is a man o' war, looks like that. Man o' wars are actually colonial. It's not one hydra, but it's a group of hydras stuck together. And they're called man o' wars because they look like ships from hundreds of years ago that were called man o' wars. All right, so then you also have hydra, which unlike the larger Portuguese man o' war, are quite small. And in my fish tank, If you were to look very closely at the plants, you might be fortunate to see some hydra sitting there. Sometimes you see some aquarium fish picking at the plant, and maybe they're eating the plant material itself. But sometimes they're eating the hydra, and the hydra are, again, almost microscopic. They're about that big. They're very small. You have a chance of seeing them without a microscope, without a magnifying glass, but um, those are the hydra, and they're quite small. Now the hydra are stuck in one place. Usually they have a foot. Sometimes this foot lets go and they start doing somersaults and they'll land somewhere else. They do have the tentacles that are out here like this, that are gathering food and bringing it into the solenoid right there. So that's the food cavity. The gastrovascular cavity is where the food is drawn in. Okay. So again, these are mostly sessile, but that foot can disconnect and then they'll start flipping around into the water. These are freshwater, so that's why they can live in my aquarium tanks. And so those are the hydroids. If you look at the term and you look at particularly this picture right there, you can see that they're not jellies, but they're not medusas, but they have the polyp form. So those are the hydroids. All right. Probably the group that you think of usually is the jellies. And here's an example of a moon jelly. And you also have the Urokanji jelly, which is generally considered one of the most dangerous ones for people. These are, as a group, they're called box jellies. As you can see, these are quite small, about a centimeter. You can see it in relation to the matches there. But these guys have that neurotoxin I spoke of earlier. And so these are dangerous, found off the coast of Australia. And I know that because I used to work with the most notable jellyfish expert in the world. He's a professor at UCLA. His name is Bill Hamner. And when I studied in Catalina for 2 weeks, Bill and I became acquainted, and we studied organisms off the coast of Catalina, shared by Avalon, but we also went up to the Isthmus, and there's a little teeny place there called Two Harbors, and then there's a marine laboratory just off of Two Harbors. So it's called Two Harbors because since it's at the Isthmus, you can just walk a short way and go to the other side of the island, the Pacific Ocean facing part of the island. But then a short walk back, and then you're at the part that faces the Long Beach Harbor. So remember, Catalina it's a large island, but it comes into a smaller, narrow section there. But right next to that is a marine laboratory where I worked for a couple of weeks many years ago with Bill, and his wife actually is a biologist also that works at UCLA. So pretty cool. When there is a problem with jellyfish or something noteworthy or newsworthy, if you watch the news, you'll often see Bill Hamner being interviewed. It's kind of like Lucy Jones with the earthquakes that we get in Southern California. When there's an earthquake, we turn on the news and we see some particular scientists. But when it comes to jellyfish, it's Bill Hamner. The third group is the sea anemones, and the sea anemones are interesting because they are one way. They generally are not found in a big group, scattered about, so they're solitary. They're larger. I've seen them like about this big, and they're flower-like and much larger. The adult form is much larger than coral, but coral are in the same group because if you take a look at these guys from a microscopic view, from a cellular organizational viewpoint, they're very similar from that level. On the outside, the coral will form reefs, and this one here is called brain coral. And for comparison, you can see a small fish right there that has a purple and orange color to it. So these guys this is brain coral, but as you know, they form larger reefs. And so the reefs are so huge that, you know, the Great Barrier Reef can be seen from outer space. So big structures, more than one organism though. So people say, well, what is the largest living thing on Earth? Well, if you mean one organism, then it's not the coral reef. But if that's not one of the bacteria, then the largest living structure on Earth could be considered by many the Great Coral Reef. Okay, this here is a photo of the actual organism, because when you look at the coral reefs, those are just the calcium carbonate houses of these little coral that are right here. So they're much smaller than sea anemone, but they've had a dramatic effect on the topography, the geology of the oceans, because they form those huge reefs. These reefs are found in warm waters and waters that have the nutrients that the organisms need to grow. So coast of California is too cold for coral reefs, because as you may remember, the water currents generally come in the Pacific Ocean, the north part of the Pacific Ocean. It goes clockwise, and so a lot of our water is coming down from Alaska. So we have cooler water. So we don't have coral, but that is good for the kelp, and that's why we have kelp forests off the coast of California. Now, in an El Nino, you're going to have those water currents reversed, and so that's when we get some warm waters coming up from Mexico. That's where we get some different fish, and that's what really goofs up our weather pattern. In marine biology, we'll be studying El Nino because it has dramatic effects on the biology of the oceans, in that we'll see different species that we don't normally see an El Nino event. All right, so today's talk, I was taking a quick look at Phylum Cnidaria, the stinging celled animals, and we took a look at their symmetry. We also saw that these guys have a particular morphology in two body forms, with a polyp and a medusa. We also saw that these guys are organized into three different classes: the hydroids, the jellies, and the sea anemones and coral. All right, so I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for coming to biology class. I'm Mr. Vallejo. We'll see you later. Bye now.